and one of the sayings I say all the time is that there's women that stand beside us, and there are women that go before us, and there are women that are coming behind us. So you are surrounded, whether you believe it or not, by torchbearers or many torches behind you trying to make the path better.
Hey guys, welcome to episode number 221 of the Game On Girlfriend podcast, where today I get to bring you Wamite Muthura, who is the founder of Career Safari. Now, if you have ever had the experience throughout your career or business life where you felt really alone, or you've been puzzled about why things are done the way they're done, or maybe the lack of representation that you're seeing in higher ups, or even as you look around the world, like what is going on here? Why does this feel so hard? In order to combat that feeling, Muthura has created this beautiful community called the Career Safari. Wamite Muthura is the founder and chief storyteller of Career Safari, a platform that spotlights and celebrates the diverse career journeys of women who are challenging what it means to be successful. And after years of global business and personal travel, Wamite founded Career Safari in 2018. She was inspired by the breadth of women that she's encountered, women who are transforming their communities, and unfortunately, women leaders who have left their careers because they're overworked and underrecognized for their accomplishments. And so Career Safari now brings together a global community of women who are seeking a healthier relationship with their careers. It offers authentic advice and resources to help women more boldly navigate the challenges of career life and redefine their own personal definition of success. If you've been looking for permission, which I know none of us want to admit we do, but sometimes we do. If you've been looking for permission to expand where you are right now, or to maybe break some of the molds that you're seeing in front of you, the Career Safari and this conversation with Wamite today might really make a difference in how you're viewing your next career decisions. So let's pop in those earphones and get to it. Wamite, thank you so much for joining us today for the Game On Girlfriend podcast. I'm really looking forward to our conversation because I'm kind of in love with your business.
Oh, well, no, don't make me cry early on. Thank you. I'm in love with what you do as well. You are so welcoming. You are full of advice. Like, I'm so happy to be here.
It's good times. It's good times. So, I mean, listen, you are like really smart. You have this massive history. You've done all these wonderful things. And now you are putting your time and energy and heart and soul and all the dollars, right, into Career Safari. And so I have to ask you, why? Why, out of all the things that I know you're capable of doing, the world knows you're capable of doing, all of us have seen you do, why is this the thing that you chose to do?
You know, did you have to remind me of all the dollars? No, but this is really coming from a place of joy and fulfillment for me. When I started Career Safari, it was completely just coming from a place of passion. It was a hobby. It was something I loved. But it was because I was coming from a place of questioning what career success looked like for me. I was lost. And I'm not kidding. Like I had several years in my career at that point. I was fortunate to find a passion very early on, working in an NGO, doing all this wonderful projects and stuff across Africa and the Caribbean. But I was just like, at a point, I was like, okay, I know I don't want to do this anymore. And so much of my identity was tied into what I was doing. It took a lot of unwinding. And there were several little things that happened to kind of help me understand who I am. I mean, thankful for leaders who believed in me and like allowed me to go to like leadership development courses. And what it came down to is that the stories and the conversation that I was having with women in these various parts of the world, they were the ones that gave me hope and gave me light. They were just being so vulnerable about, they might be a CEO of a company, but things have been very real for them. Facing divorce, leaving countries, changing career paths. And it just made me feel like, I do recognize I was fortunate early on to be so happy and find a passion. But this whole disruption that's happening inside of me is normal. And through many little things, what it came out is I was coming back and telling people all about the women that I've talked to. Like, oh, I was talking to this woman here, and I realized, why don't I just create a platform to showcase those stories? And that's why Career Safari started. And man, oh man, it has taken me on a journey now, but I still have that passion, and the engine and the fuel behind why I'm doing that is still, I want to give diverse stories a platform.
Yeah.
And I want people to have evidence and proof that it's okay to be different. I want them to have evidence and proof that there are people that look like you that are probably doing things that you're already doing or something similar to what you want to do. And we're not alone in this journey.
I love that. I love that. And I think that piece of representation is so important, that when we see other people doing what we know we want to do, especially if they look the way that we look, the difference that makes. Because it's hard enough already, right? Like, there is so much we have to do in starting a business. There's so much, especially when you have a mission like that and you're attached to it and you love it. And then it's like, oh my God, there are so many brick walls I have to bust through internally and externally, that to at least see the level of diversity out there as well, that's following that up, and that you have somebody who's started to blaze the trail with you, whether they're in front of the path or behind, like that shoulder to shoulder feeling. That must be so cool for you to watch that.
Oh, it's so empowering. I mean, anytime I interview women through the podcast, or I meet someone on other projects that I'm working on, I'm naturally nosy, so it helps. It helps to be a little bit nosy and to do this work, but it empowers me and it gives me fuel. And I remember those stories and I like lock them into my memory and my soul. Like, oh, you know what? I do remember that she did this. I do remember that someone did that. And I now have the ability to connect people to these wonderful women. So it's really a blessing. But those internal and external barriers are very, very real. And sometimes it's the internal ones that are more overwhelming, sometimes the external ones as well. But the interesting thing is, and just in my history of doing this, no matter what industry I've seen these torchbearers, and those are the women that I feature, no matter what industry that I see them in, they are usually facing gender barriers. So they could be in teaching, they could be in nursing, and you think that those are fields that are really female dominated, and in many places of the world they are. But once you start getting to those leadership levels and those decision maker levels, it gets extremely male driven. So you're constantly facing those barriers.
I think that's always true. I think there's always a level that we hit. And I think this is really important what you're saying. I'm just going to take us on a tiny segue, if that's important, to the side that one of the things I've been talking about, I think over the last 5 years, especially a lot more intensely, that I hope we all sort of recognize, is that the way business has been structured, the way life has been structured, right? Any institution that we see or participate in now was made for and by white men. And so we get to a certain level, right? And we're like, this doesn't work at all for me at all in any way, shape, or form, right? And so I love that you call the women you highlight torchbearers, right? Because it's like breaking through all these things that for all these years, we've been so fed as normal. And so to represent and highlight these voices that are like, or not, right, is so great, right? Or not going down that path, right? I just think that is so awesome. And it's something all of us have to deal with, is breaking through. Is that real? Is that real? And like you were saying, the internal and external barriers, right, that we have to break through. I just think you are doing such important work to help all of us shatter that. I just think
Thank you. No, and one of the sayings I say all the time is that there's women that stand beside us, and there are women that go before us, and there are women that are coming behind us. So you are surrounded, whether you believe it or not, by torchbearers or many torches behind you trying to make the path better.
I love it. I love it. And continuing to smooth it out for every single person who comes afterwards, as well, as we all stand shoulder to shoulder. It's so cool.
Yeah.
And as we get that huge emotional, I think, and personal piece of your business that obviously fueled your movement forward, There's also like some strategic reasons that you decided to do this. What were the holes that you saw in the market that had you create Career Safari?
Yeah. So just to like back up a little bit, Career Safari is all about uplifting different stories of diverse women. So what we stand on and what I really want to accomplish with Career Safari is to make the workplace more equitable and diverse for women. And on the individual side, I want us as women, I want really all people to have a healthier relationship with our careers. So that is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And like I said, when I started Career Safari, it really was just something I wanted to do. It was like, okay, I am big on making sure that whatever work that I'm doing, that it's fueling me. And to be very candid with you, Sarah, I was tired of so much of my passion being tied to somebody else's organization. And I'm like, you know what? I want to, and this was a part of the self-discovery during that time of like me not knowing what I wanted to do. I wanted to feel my own passion. I wanted it to come from within inside of me, but I didn't know what it was going to be. So when I realized I wanted to create this platform and create different ways of telling women's stories, I didn't want to do it on my own. I didn't have the energy for it. I still had a full-time job, a job that I needed, a job that I still pretty much liked. So I didn't want to do all the work of starting my own thing. I didn't want any of it. I just was like, let me just get featured in somebody's newsletter once a month to share these stories. And that's enough for me. And so I did a lot of research around what would be a good place to share my story. And then it just became very clear because just for a lot of different reasons that it's better for me to do it on my own. And then I looked at, well, maybe if somebody else is doing something similar, then I can just join them. But then everyone felt a little bit too niched for me. And what was really important for me was global diversity. I didn't, I've had people tell me I should just focus on African-American women because I am African-American. I'm like, I will and I can, but I want the liberty to focus on any type of woman that I want in terms of ethnicity. And then other brands I felt were like too on the nose, as they say. It was very much about like, we are girls, hear us roar. And I'm like, oh no, I'm a slightly cynical person. And that's not really like my brand and who I am. Even though I do believe in like all that stuff, but
that wasn't your goal. That was not your goal.
That was not my goal.
Yeah, I got it.
And, I do think that there are a lot of different types of people like you are doing it or focusing on women's empowerment. And it kind of goes to what you said earlier. We can have a million of these things and it's not enough because we are constantly fed, whether we know it or not, images of us that are playing in our head. Yes. So if there are millions of us that are out there starting podcasts, starting businesses, whatever it may be, starting media channels that are focused solely on women's empowerment, that's still not enough because we are dealing with generations of toxic images that we are trying to basically counteract and change. So I ended up just doing it on my own because I realized more and more as I was doing the discovery of what I wanted to do for Career Safari, I had a lot more to say than I originally thought. And, I just talked to friends who are in like media or in branding, and they gave me some ideas of how to do it on my own in a smaller way. And then it's grown since there. And I was long-winded with fonts.
No, I love it because you started with it and you ended with it, which is I didn't want to fulfill someone else's passion.
No,
I wanted to fulfill mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. I think it's really hard to do. It sounds funny for me. I'm like, you can make a business out of anything, Sarah Walton, right? But I'm like, it takes a lift because we're fed stuff all the time, right? But then even once we get into this space, it's very difficult to not consume what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
And reproduce what everybody else is doing again. Right. It's almost like a constant vigilance to like come back into home, come back into heart, come back into our own passions and make sure that is actually being nurtured and that is what we're delivering. It's like I say, it's not armchair activity.
It is, but you would have to do this anyway if you wanted to be a leader in somebody else's company.
Love
Like
that.
they pay you for that innovation, they pay you to do that work. So even if you weren't doing it on your own, and there is a different level of intensity and vulnerability when it's your own business, don't get me wrong. But if you wanted to even be a leader in a Fortune 500 company, it still is going to require you to have do that level of discovery and be that vulnerable. It's required to be a leader, to be a good leader, I should say.
Sorry, I think you stunned me into silence for a second. I think that's absolutely correct. And I know I'm looking away going, gosh, how many times did I remember sitting at conference tables so many times I'd hear myself parrot someone else, or I'd hear someone else do it, or how often that just happens. We just sort of get into a flow and we just sort of start going down that path, and what it takes to actually go, wait a minute, I have a new idea, or I think there's a different way we could do this, or what about if we tried this, and playing the what if game a little bit and starting to expand. But you're absolutely right. It is needed always, right?
Especially if you're getting paid the big bucks.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And the people who do that, right? The people who break their own industries, right?
Yes.
Air fryers of the world, even Cirque du Soleil that they talk about in Blue Ocean Strategy. I love that, right? Like they broke the circus, right? Oh my God, they totally reinvented it. And that takes something.
Yeah,
internally. It really takes like this internal courage, I think, to continue to look at that. I mean, speaking of that, though, I would love to know inside the community. One, I want to hear what happens inside the community. So we'll get to that in just a second. But of the women's stories that you've been able to collect so far, what has really inspired you? What has surprised you that you've seen inside the community?
Oh, again, I love it. So I could talk about this all day. But I'll say every different season of my life, a different story holds dear to me. So like one person that I've been thinking about a lot is like Dr. Rupa Dutt. And she is a medical doctor, but she also started her own not-for-profit called Women in Global Health, because she was sitting at a conference and probably in Switzerland, a global health conference, and she realized there was no women on stage. And it started off as a hashtag, like why, I don't know the exact phrasing, but like, why aren't there any women there? Hashtag Women in Global Health. And it went from a hashtag to a full movement. She now has thousands of people that are a part of this community. If you Google it, there's Women in Global Health in Kenya. There's Women in Global Health in pick a country. Like it really did spark a movement. And again, she did this while she was still is a medical doctor. So I think about her story right now because I'm in the middle of balancing like being a full-time entrepreneur and also the other skills that I have. Like I have a background in nonprofit. I have a background in like tech and customer success. So it's like balancing like these worlds is quite challenging. I feel like I kind of love the challenge, but her story comes to mind. And like really what you get when you're inside of the community is I try to provide more tips on how to do what they're doing. We have like sessions around career development and wellness as well. And there's always things that I'm working on right now. So right now we're actually thinking about starting our own internal entrepreneur community. So that's, I'm just going to put that out there. So I'm really excited for that to come out as well.
Yeah. Oh my God, that sounds like so much fun. And what a story. I think it's interesting that I think sometimes we can underestimate actually speaking what we're seeing. Do you know what I mean? Like just creating the hashtag, where are all the women, right? Like that is like that just speaking what we're seeing. And sometimes it can surprisingly take on its own energy and like this movement feel pretty quickly. But I think it just underscores how important it is that we actually say something.
It is. And, the funny thing with Rupa's story is she actually went to another female leader who was more senior than her and said, what are we going to do about this? And the woman's response, as wise as she is, it was, why don't you do something about it? And so she did.
I love it. But what a great answer. I think that's right. And sometimes, inside of that, the wisdom, I love that you said it's so wise, because inside of that level of wisdom is that you're the one that it bothered the most. You're the one who saw it. And I think that matters. Right.
It
Because
matters.
there were so many other people who noticed it and then like went on to go get lunch or whatever. Right. They're like, that's weird. And then, right. But when it's something that sort of pokes at you back, you're the one that gets to do something with that. And I really believe that. I think there's so much more energy and passion and fire behind movements when it's the person who really got clobbered by it, either their own experience, right? Or it wouldn't leave them alone. And I think that's actually really, really important. I love that you actually said that. I think that's cool. I hope.
And there's a lot of, I mean, that's part of your fuel. And one of our other torch bearers, Joyce, she mentioned, and it holds close to me as well, that, there is, I truly believe that there is something that God, the universe, puts in all of us to give back to this world in a positive way. And we can either ignore it or we can embrace it. And sometimes it's those little nudges, like most of the time, let's be very honest, it's those little nudges that are warnings inside of ourselves, like, this is something you actually care about. Is this something you actually want to deal with and approach and try to solve for? I mean, we care about lots of different things, but we know when we have those little triggers inside of us, like, I don't like that one bit. Like, I don't like how women are treated in the workplace. I don't like how employees in general are treated in the workplace.
Here.
Which is why I have this platform.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So if someone's listening and they're like, wait a sec, what happens inside this community? I might want to join it. What would they expect, or where should they go?
Oh, if you want to join the community, go to thecareersafari.com. I would absolutely recommend that you also follow us on social media. So what we're doing now is we're having like quarterly sessions, like I said, around wellness and like empowerment, and also around career development. So I'm bringing in different experts to talk about whether it's, how do you find some like mental health balance with everything that you're going through, or it could be around how do you make sure you're perfecting your resume, things like that. So it goes from like the really practical things to like more of the like spiritual wellness and balance type of like mental health concerns.
Love it. I love it. That's awesome. Thank you so much for that. You guys, we're going to have links to that underneath this video if you're watching on YouTube, or in the show notes if you're listening in. And I think one other question that just popped up as you were sharing about the community and these women, this is more of an entrepreneurial question, but if there's anything you could tell your past self, if you could just go back and be like, listen, here's one thing I really want you to know now. What do you wish you had known when you started that you know now?
I wish I knew to say yes to more things.
Oh, I love that. Okay.
Because I was scared. I questioned if people would resonate with what I was doing. I questioned if I was the right person for this. I questioned whether women would actually want me to tell their stories. And so a lot of the times when people offered a helping hand, I realized, and a good friend of mine who is an entrepreneur and has a really successful business said, Wamite, you need to start to saying yes. And she said, it was one day, over some wine, and she kind of told me that, and I was like, oh my goodness, and that was all my fear coming in. Like I'm, the imposter syndrome stuff that we're constantly trying to get away from us. So I wish I allowed myself to say yes to more offers for help and support.
I love that. Oh, I have a feeling somebody just heard that. Someone listening went, oh my God, that's me. Well, Wamite, thank you so much for being here with us today and for sharing your wisdom. And honestly, thank you for doing what you're doing. It's so exciting to see women elevate other women at this level.
Oh, thank you. And I will say another thing that I also wanted to mention is like, we're all about telling different types of diverse career women stories, but it's about doing it in other ways. So what my platform is all about is that empowerment, and it's also about like different images. So another thing that I would like to tease for you is that it's not just going to be about the podcast, but we're expanding on different types of media to actually tell women's stories. So if you're part of the community, I didn't want to forget, like, join, and you can listen and be a part of those different types of stories that are coming out.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Because like we said, that representation, hearing other people's stories, all different faces, all different walks of life, all different parts of the world. It's just so important. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. This is fantastic. I could keep going, but I love this time with you. Thank you for everything that you're doing to empower all types of people, but specifically women, to achieve their dreams, to go for business, to be smarter, and to not feel like they are alone in this path. What you're doing is so important, and in any way can help and support you, I will.